What's up, guys? LQ here with the LQ Review. Thank you so much for joining me here at my YouTube channel. This is where I talk about all the geeky, nerdy stuff that I love to talk about. Movies, video games, comic books, and TV shows. And right now, let's talk about Creature Commandos Episode 1 and Episode 2. James Gunn has now officially kicked off the DCU. So, is it off to a good start? I know that the reviews for Creature Commandos have been very good. I'm traditionally not a guy who loves animation. There's some animation that I like, but I don't seek out animation because sometimes I have a hard time getting into it. I was a fan of Zack Snyder's films. Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Zack Snyder's Justice League. I liked all three of them. Even Batman v Superman, I liked it, especially the Ultimate Edition. I was a fan of Wonder Woman. I thought that was a very good film. I liked James Gunn, The Suicide Squad, very much. I even liked the first Suicide Squad. I fully admit that the movie was a mess. I get that, but I like it. There's some DCU films, DCEU that I didn't like. Wonder Woman 1984 comes to mind. But I acknowledged, as much as I liked the DCEU, and for the most part I did, as much as I liked it, I acknowledged that it didn't resonate with fans. Batman vs. Superman should have made $1 billion in its sleep. Man of Steel is one of the best comic book movies I've ever seen, and it only made like $600 million. Just because I liked it doesn't mean that I'm blind to the fact that it didn't hit with most audience members. So I applauded Warner Brothers for creating a DC Studios, putting James Gunn in charge and saying, let's start this thing over and let's get it right this time. Okay, that being said, Creature Commandos, the first 2 episodes, is so freaking fun. I loved it. These are characters that, for the most part, I'm not incredibly familiar with in the comics. And guys, I've been reading comics since I've been reading DC specifically since 1986. I have had a pull file from the comic book store since 1986, nonstop. And while I was aware of most of these characters, I'm not terribly familiar with them. I've got the run of Justice League Dark that has Frankenstein in it. I've got some GI Robot comics. I've got some comics that these characters appear in, but none of these characters are any that I ever followed, any that I was ever invested in. And the fact that in 2 episodes, I'm completely invested in these characters, I like each one of them, is a testament to James Gunn's storytelling. And yeah, I'm on board. So Amanda Waller takes the Project M for Monster, because after the events of the Suicide Squad, she's not allowed to put together Task Force X anymore. So she's put together Task Force M because these things aren't humans, they're monsters. Speaking of which, James Gunn said that things that happen in the DCEU that he mentions in his movies, those are things that happened. Whatever he doesn't mention didn't happen. And Amanda Waller specifically mentions Project Starfish. So the Suicide Squad happened in this DCU. And the Peacemaker happened because they also referenced that as well as her daughter blowing the lid on Project X. So these are things that happened. As we move forward, I'm okay with James Gunn doing this. If you look at any comic book reboot that has ever happened, Crisis on Infinite Earths, 0 Hour, Final Crisis, we could go on and on and on and on. Flashpoint, whatever we're talking about here, any reboot we're talking about, the writers have always kept some stuff and gotten rid of others. So strictly as a comic book fan, I'm okay with that idea of saying, okay, let's get rid of the stuff that didn't work and let's keep the stuff that we liked. Maybe you didn't like the Suicide Squad. Maybe you didn't like Peacemaker. I did. I thought Peacemaker was freaking amazing. So, so yeah, I'm fine with the concept of keeping some things and getting rid of others. Just want to be clear on that, because every comic book reboot ever has done that. Okay, so she puts together this task force of monsters, non-humans, and they need to go protect royalty, this princess or queen or whatever, from being killed by Cersei. So they do kind of introduce the idea of Themyscira and the Amazons. You know, there's a news report that was like, this island, which may or may not exist. And you've got the sons of Themyscira, who are this group that wants to go back and take it over. You know, they are working with Cersei, and they're very much like, yeah, this place exists and it has amazing waterfalls and we want to go there. And it's an island of all women. So in this DC universe, Wonder Woman, I do not believe, has been introduced yet. All right, so they are protecting this royalty, and we are introduced to all of our main characters, right? Dr. Phosphorus, Weasel, GI Robot, the Bride, and as we're introduced to them, we get to know each one of them better. And one thing that James Gunn is very good at is making characters like this relatable, and making characters like this seem real. He also introduces Rick Flag Sr., voiced by Frank Grillo, which was a lot of fun. I really like this character. I'm really rooting for this character, and I hope that this character plays a big role moving forward in the DC universe. They do mention that his son was killed during Project Starfish, and he has a bit of a monologue about his son, I think in episode 2, and that was real nice. In episode 2, we go through the origins of the Bride, origins of Frankenstein. It gets very twisted, especially Dr. Frankenstein's relationship with the Bride. It gets very weird, very twisted. I mean, I was a fan of it, but I wasn't, if that makes sense. Like, I was a fan of the story. I wasn't a fan of anything that was happening in it. But I mean that in the best way possible, because it was interesting. Yeah, we see a fight between Cersei and the Bride. It was action-packed. It was hard-hitting. And we got to see some of the Bride's power and just how strong she is. We got to see some history between Frankenstein's monster and the Bride. And yeah, these first 2 episodes worked so well that when the second episode was over, all I could think of was, no, I want to see more. So, guys, this is a great start to the DCU. And if James Gunn shows Superman anywhere near the same amount of love that he's showing Creature Commandos, we might be in for something special here. So I might be putting the cart in front of the horse here, but I just feel like the DCU's in good hands. And I hope plenty of people check Creature Commandos out and are able to see just how fun this story is. So, and this is coming from someone who was a fan of the Snyderverse. I remember being so excited when Henry Cavill showed up at the end of Black Adam. And I remember thinking to myself, this is going to be awesome. It's not going to make any money, but it's going to be awesome. And part of me was heartbroken when they canceled it, when they canceled the DCEU. And then there was the logical part of me that says, you know what? I get it. Black Adam only made $400 million. Should have been huge. All the movies around that, The Flash, Birds of Prey, they all bombed. Aquaman 2 bombed. I mean, you've got these major movies that should be doing very well, bombing, bomb. I get it. I understand why the Snyderverse was canceled. And I know that not all those films were directed by Zack Snyder. Don't come after me and saying, well, Aquaman 2 wasn't directed by Zack Snyder. It wasn't really part of the Snyderverse. It was. The The Snyderverse was the DCEU. The DCU was the Snyderverse. They were the same. You can push up your little glasses all you want. They were the same. And I get why they had to restart it. As much as it pains me, as much as I loved Henry Cavill as Superman, I get it. So I'm 100% on board. I love these characters. And it's like I've always said, I have loved these characters before I even knew who Zack Snyder was. Way before I knew who Zack Snyder was. And I will love these characters now that he's out too. His interpretation of Superman might have been my favorite interpretation of Superman, and he was. As much as I love the Donner films, I grew up watching the Donner films. As much as I love them, Henry Cavill's interpretation of Superman was my favorite. So as much as I loved it, I get it. I get it. And I will love these characters even after the Henry Cavill era, Zack Snyder era. I will love these characters, and I will always root for them, and I will always cheer for the movies to be good. And if they're not good, then I'll say so. There were DCEU films that I did not like. I've already mentioned a couple of them. Birds of Prey, yawn. But Wonder Woman 1984 was terrible. But I still went to see it. I still paid my money to see it in theaters because I love these characters so much. And I will continue to love them. And sometimes the movies will be good. Sometimes the TV shows will be good. Sometimes they'll be bad. That's just the reality of it. But I'm always going to root for them. And I don't care who's directing. I don't care who the studio head is. I don't care about any of that. All I care is that I'm getting these movies that I dreamed about when I was a kid. Guys, some of you youngsters, you don't know how spoiled you are. There's a Blue Beetle movie. When I was a kid, all we got was Batman and Superman. That was it. And I remember reading Justice League International and dreaming that one day we'll have movies with these characters in them. That we'll have movies with Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, and maybe Maxima will show up, and maybe one day we'll get Fire and Ice, and maybe one day we'll get Guy Gardner. Maybe Jon Stewart will show up one day. Maybe one day we can have a movie with these amazing characters. Captain Atom. Maybe one day we can have a Captain Atom movie. You know, I dreamed this when I was a kid. And it's happening. Sometimes I wish they were better. Absolutely. But it's happening. And it's still happening. We are spoiled. And I love it. I love it. And I just hope that this new DCU is an era of strong storytelling, cohesive storytelling that builds up to something big. Much like the first 3 phases of the Avengers was. That's what I'm hoping. All right, guys. Went on a bit of a rant there, but I love the first 2 episodes of Creature Commandos, and I hope that you check them out. Have you? Are you going to check them out? Tell me what you thought of them in the comments down below. While you're down there commenting, make sure you subscribe to my channel, and until next time, we'll see you guys later.